So this episode of Fafanua Afrika will be exploring the realities young Africans face on a daily and the choices that will determine Africa's place in a rapidly evolving global economy. And to unpack this, I have Joshua Triumphant, founder, Leaven Leadership Academy. I also have Hameed Abdulrahman, a software engineer, of course, from Edinburgh in the UK, while Moyinoluwa Allen, a product and technology leader also in the UK, joins me. So thank you so much, gentlemen. It's nice having you around. I'll just start with Joshua anyway. Now, Joshua, Africa holds the world's youngest minds, yet struggles to produce a workforce with skills fit for a modern labor market. What explains, or what explanation would you like to give for this contradiction?
Good afternoon, everybody. So there's no one answer that answers the question. There are a couple of things over the last 20, 30 years responsible for this gap. So it's a great thing that we have a young population. It's a great thing for innovation, for forecasting, for so many things. There's a great thing we have a young population. The challenge, though, is that the infrastructure that helps carry that young population, give them possibilities, or at least resources and infrastructure, policies that helps protect that young base, provide for them an environment that enables them to pursue development, pursue growth, pursue all their possibilities and everything that is possible for them. You see, that is what is missing. In spite of that, we also have a young population that have accepted responsibility at a deep personal level. And we can find, bits and pieces across different, states and different regions, whether it's in primary markets like Lagos or Abuja, or secondary markets like Port Harcourt, Ibadan. We'll find hubs of innovation where young people are taking personal responsibility to provide and build infrastructures, whether in entertainment, whether in tech, whether in small businesses, digital entrepreneurs. So there are a lot of reasons, but at the core of it is failure of government, lack of access to so many things that our own contemporaries across the world sort of have access to. That's pretty much what I think what is responsible for a young population that cannot deliver or that don't have access to all of the opportunities that their own counterpart across the world have access to.
Okay, so let me talk to Hameed. What do you think? I mean, the population is there. The intellectual capacity is there. Of course, we have youth who have the energy. They're willing to learn. What is actually missing when you look at the population, the young minds that Africa has, which is actually a tool for potential greatness, with the labor market's demands that seem not to be adequately equipped with this youth to deliver?
Like I said, I think it's still based on the fact that we are having issues with the gap between the infrastructure and the needs of this labor market itself. So an example that you made mention of was the fact that these infrastructures are not completely there. So with the rise of this AI and automated tools that are happening currently, I think it's a very, very good round of innovations that could actually come from Africa. And we just need to watch in closely while it unfolds. But at the moment, we might be seeing a very little progression. And this is due to the fact that even at the grassroots, this infrastructure has not been inculcated to it. There is having this problem mindset, solving problems from various aspects of the labor itself. But I think if we watch closely, the adaptation and the movement of engineers from around the aspect of Africa itself, it's becoming a thing that the world actually want to explore. And you will see the trend coming along with engineers actually being offered very great roles from around the world, in the US, in the UK. And I think it's just more minority of the grassroots that has not actually been inculcated to this global aspect, and hopefully we get to see that as we come along. Yeah.
Okay, Moyinoluwa, let me also get your thoughts. I mean, we can talk about, okay, we don't seem to have Moyinoluwa for now. All right, I thought we had, of course, our guest. But then, Joshua, so I'll just come back to you. I mean, we can blame it on government and say it's the failure of government, poor infrastructure, lack of opportunities and all. But then we see a market that keeps expanding. Unemployment and skills mismatch continue to deepen. So what is the issue with funding, either from the government or the private sector? I don't know. What about weak curricula? I'm talking about education now. Or is it policy confusion? Or is it poor execution of, policies or measures that help these youth become qualified for the demand that the markets is actually looking out for?
Again, I have to say again that it's bit and piece of all of these things. At the academic level, there's a mismatch in terms of curriculum and global positioning in terms of the relevance of what is being taught. Mismatch of policies, like you said, lack of infrastructure. So you will find that at the center of all of these issues, that you will find the bits and pieces of all the so-called Nigerian problem. All right. The citizens as well, we Nigerians, young Nigerians, this youth population, there's also a responsibility on our own end in terms of what we focus on and how distracted we are, and how that carries into the overarching problems that we experience in our country. Again, like my fellow guy, the guy on the other end said, you will find, and I'm trying to also shed light on the fact that you will find young Nigerians do amazing work, but they are doing it in spite of all this problem. So yes, it's a bit and piece of everything, but I believe it starts from the top, yes. And then when you begin to dissect the problem step by step, you will find there is a policy angle to it. You will find even cultural representations of what it means to be educated in Nigeria. The other day, we saw pictures of secondary school students having to on makeshift lights, like candles and all that, and phone lights, just to take exams. The impact of that on the mind of a young person, and how that carries into how he sees the world, and what he interprets as possibilities. They all play a part to this gap. It plays a part. Everything. It's a melting pot of what it means to be a Nigerian that impacts and shows in the gap in terms of the correlation between global trends and the opportunities and what is missing on our own end. It's a mixture. It's a cooking pot here.
So many things.
And it's important to do. Yes, so many.
Okay, so I understand that Moyinoluwa Allen has joined us now. Moyin, if you can hear me, of course I can see you. So I'd also like to get your perspective. I mean, we can blame it on government, we can blame it on cultural perspectives or issues or limitations. But then from your end, how do you see it? Unemployment, underemployment, they are widespread on the continent. We see many young people who either work below their qualifications, earn little, or even struggle to gain employment. But then we also have a labor market that keeps evolving and keeps making demands for certain skills to fill up certain roles. So where is the issue is when it comes to having African youths being gainfully employed, being rightly skilled, and being useful to fill necessary roles? What is the issue with attaining that when we see other continents, other countries ace this?
I think that if we're comparing with other countries, I think if you compare that to what we have in Nigeria or Africa, what we have is a lack of proper structure for growth. In a country like Nigeria, there are a lot of people, a lot of youths that are willing to work, but it's either there's a skill gap or there is no business that is willing to employ them. If there is no business that is willing to employ them, that's because businesses are not really striving or thriving in the economy of the country. And how can we have a better economy for businesses is if there are better policies that sort of help these businesses thrive. And if a business is doing well, they will be willing to employ more youths. They'll be willing to invest in developing the skills of even workers that work with them. Talk less of people that are outside that that are not working with them yet. So I believe that in order for this gap to be sort of filled, it has to do with everybody coming together, both the private sector, the public sector, and even private individuals, right? Because there are a lot of solutions that are going on in Nigeria and Africa now, but more needs to be done. Looking at the population or the percentage, maybe about we're just scratching the surface when it comes to the talents that we have. And for us to properly harness, this talent or skills that we have, it means that we need support from various sectors of the economy, from the government, from private individuals, set up different boot camps. Yes, we have them, but we need more. Right, we need more boot camps. We need more skill sections that the youths can sort of attend, and this will help them upskill and put us on, if not on par, we'll be able to compete with even other continents and develop disruptions that would take our continent further.
Okay, so two things that you mentioned. You talked about businesses, succeeding and thriving, and you also talked about the organization of boot camps to increase the upskilling of youths, and that probably would just mean talent hunting and seeing how to invest in those talents. But then we've seen talks around if businesses are even making strides in their operations, in their deliverables, in their revenues, and that's where I bring Hameed into this. Is it that businesses are facing economic realities that makes it hard for them to organize boot camps, organize programs that help them to identify talents to invest in? Or is it just these corporate organizations that are just nonchalant and not willing to do anything? They're just looking for a ready person to fill in the ready market.
It cuts both ways. So first is that even the skill itself has to come with the infrastructure. We start from the boot camping, and it has to actually even start from the primary aspect of the education itself. Like, are we inculcating all these new deliveries like AI, like data science into our curriculums in schools? Do you have to be on a master's level before you can actually start working with AIs or working with automated platform, or do you have to go to those bootcamp to actually be able to see this? And I feel like it has to be more of the educational aspect, growing towards this industrial growth of youth actually being open-minded towards it. Then we now talk about the fact that these businesses are actually really, really trying hard to actually start in the first instance, like building up the capital to actually start the business. Then you find a scenario whereby the government are actually making policies that are actually affecting these businesses to actually thrive. So I think it's cuts across both ways. And I think first is that we need to actually come together, like Joshua said, and we need to actually analyze what's the problem, which is first that should actually start from the grassroots, from this educational aspect. And then this complaint could actually be made to make policies regarding even upskilling youth Because at the moment, most of the employment you want to see now are for senior roles. They are not entry roles anymore because they feel like they don't have the resources to actually train these youth anymore because they have some overhead costs that are coming from the business itself. So I think we need to like go back to the drawing board and look inward and see how we can actually like start up this thing from the governmental aspect of the education itself. Then this business could actually like do the very little aspects of training and also like offering all these entry roles. So I think it's both ways, both the labor market and also the government aspect of actually like bringing up this youth up to speed with education and curriculums that actually have these core skills that are required in the business. Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine. Now, Joshua, let me just quickly ask you this, right? You mentioned it earlier anyway. We've seen other regions experience rapid artificial intelligence and automation shifts and growth. And we understand that Africa is actually joining in that wave through youth innovation, startups, and coming up with novel ideas and businesses. But then the progress seems slow when you do a comparison with their counterparts or their peers in other countries. Is it elitist to venture into that part, or is it capital intensive? Or does it have to do with an inhibition? Aside, frailties on the part of government now, is it that it's too expensive to venture into full AI for youths that are hoping to tap into that experience?
AI in itself is, you have to understand the different use cases in terms of how it applies for business, for career people and all that. So it depends on the areas, in particular where young people are focused in and how to apply it. Well, in terms of the cost of usage, is it expensive? The technology of this in terms of the hardware parts of what it costs, maybe, but the software in terms of how you use it on the front end, whether you're beginning from prompt engineering using ChatGPT and the rest, or you want to build your backend in terms of an agent AI, whether you want to use it for customer service or even brand, just you want to build an AI for your brand. Regardless of what you want to, it's not as expensive as it looks or as it's made to sound anyways. But my concern really is cultural integration. My concern with artificial intelligence is cultural integration, because innovation is progressive. There's so much about technology that has not deepened into our overall usage. That makes it sort of maybe a little elitist, like you mentioned, for you to then jump all of those innovation gap and want to just tap into AI. Now, there are certain user groups that need to use and produce at that level. But for the most part, digital literacy is still, I know we're going to get to that, but there's a young population that can't even use Google Doc. That can't even use simple Google productivity tools. So there's that problem in terms of how it has been integrated into our culture, where it becomes baseline before we then produce high-level AI integration into businesses and career. So we have to face it, squarely on different levels. We have to face it at the top level, where certain user groups have to pursue the use of artificial intelligence to solve problems. Then we have to solve the problem of digital education at grassroots level or even middle class level, where university graduates cannot use simple technical tools to produce and enhance their productivity. So we have to look at it clearly. There's the challenge with integrating AI into your business, but I think that the more pressing challenge is real digital education, that is integrated culturally, where it becomes sort of like, we need to get to a point where, things like even Microsoft Word and things like that becomes standard, basic. as part of our education. Without that, the challenge at the top for AI and other innovations that are coming will continue to be a problem.
Okay, so Moyinoluwa, I mean, you're a product and a technology leader, and this is where we need to ask you. We know that African youths are very energetic, they're very creative, they love new things, tech and all that, and they will always want to pivot away from a 9-to-5 job. Of course, I usually hear that they don't like a 9-to-5 job. They want to carve a niche for themselves, get into the tech space and hit it big. But then this is a space, according to what Joshua said, that it's a whole spectrum of issues, most especially when it even comes to digital learning and digital access. So what day-to-day obstacles actually stop young people from learning basic digital skills? I mean, when you look at digital literacy, in other parts of the world, the penetration is high. What are the issues on the continent?
To also pick from what he said, it's from the grassroots, right? People, even in Nigeria, people would rather go on websites than download mobile apps, right? Which is an issue. So Nigerians would rather do things traditionally or go on a website than download mobile apps, which sort of eats deep into the kind of people that we are, right? We are slow to accepting things like this. And it all boils down to the fact that we need to be open-minded as a people, right? We need to accept these new things. Unfortunately or fortunately, these things have come to stay. We just need to accept them and try to use them to our advantage as a people. If as a youth or as a young person that wants to pivot into technology or tech, as the case may be, you need to understand what you want to do. You need to understand the market that you are coming into. You don't just wake up and decide that, I want to build a product. You need to understand what problem your product is going to be solving. You need to understand what or who your customers are. You need to know, your market and be, when somebody wakes you up in the morning, you're able to tell, this is the problem of this market and this is what I am doing to solve this problem. If we're able to tackle it from the grassroots, if we're able to show willingness and passion, I believe that Nigerian youth would be able to pivot successfully. Of course, business is not easy. You can encounter different issues from the side of your customers, even from government policies and all of that. But if there is a willing mind, to learn, if there is a willing passion, to build a successful technical business, I believe that the average Nigerian youth can achieve that if they put their mind and passion to it.
Okay, so Hameed, you're a software engineer, right? And I can just imagine what detail or information would have informed your choice in terms of the tertiary institution you want to go to study, a course that makes you a qualified personnel as, of course, a software engineer. What would also inform you the kind of school in the kind of environment that would help you have the requisite skills to become an expert in your field. But then you look at many universities on the African continent and you wonder if that intentionality is there. I mean, a lot of them still lack AI and data science pathways. You wonder the kind of conversation they have when they build a structural and educational structural system that impacts knowledge and the kind of knowledge they impact in our young minds. How do academics even teach relevant content in schools when it seems as though they are not even up to date with the kind of knowledge bank required to teach and to make our youths competent, most especially in this tech field?
I think that's a very, very big gap has already been done with both the fact that the educational curriculum at the moment has been developed for as long as 1990s, and the reality there is that things have actually changed. Like, obviously, right now we're in the stage of whereby it's important to actually see automations and aspect of computer science that has to do with the new reality. Instead of actually working on computation that actually deals with mainframes and things that are have very, very little relevance to the current situation of things, I think it still boils down to the fact that our educational aspects in Africa in general are still on the wheel of the long term. Or still on the wheel of the fact that, okay, we are trying to build more foundational skills, which is nice, but still, the foundational skills is not enough to the current stage at which the world is at the moment. So if you want, for example, like myself, I actually attended FUTMINA, that's Federal University of Technology. And that was a reason why I was able to pivot into the tech industry. And if you look at an average of a youth in Africa, we should actually have a situation whereby children from like 5 years old to 9 years old are in innovative programs whereby they learn how to like do game design and all that. I actually like attend an innovation center here where I volunteer. And most of the children already from 5 years old to 9 years old, they're learning how to like assign data structure, do things like video game design, very easy things that actually stimulates that mindset towards actually building something. And this still comes back to the fact that this structure is not there to actually harness these skills that we can actually get from this young youth. And it's important for us to go back and think more about the fact that how we could actually like putting into this educational aspect, putting into this innovative mindset that we could set in these young children that are coming up in this generation. And I think it's very, very important for us to actually go back to the drawing board and see what the education is actually bringing out, instead of actually just following through with what has been done in the past that are not relevant for today anymore. So like you said, data structure, data science, it's important in today's job market. But which of the universities are teaching it? Even the general computer science they're teaching, it's still all about algorithm, data structure, which fine and good, it's fundamental, that's important for today learning. But still, we need to go extra mile to add these new curriculums that are coming up that are important for the labor market to actually be strong enough to be strong enough for the counterpart around the world. So I think it's still based on the line of education being in a backward stage, not obviously at the end of what the current job market actually needs. So I think we should still have to go back to that drawing board and see how we can actually like push further, not just the fundamental, but also the fundamental and the required skills of this current labor market that's well untapped. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, Joshua, yes. So we've talked about some of the challenges, or basically the fundamental issues inhibiting, of course, upskilling, jobs, access, and all AI, most especially for the African youth. So we also see that new fintech and agri-tech solutions are emerging across the continent, which seems to be a positive. So we are going to look at it from that angle. The potential is there. We see an African youth that's actually growing and hoping to take that technological leap, right? But then one thing that struck me from Hameed's response and Moyinoluwa's response is tackling it from the grassroots, and of course, the issue around building the infrastructure, because he said the infrastructure is not there. So what corrections should we be making now? Hameed has talked about it, part of it anyway, but from your own angle, what should we be doing? So this is what we are going to do anyway. Let's quickly go on a very short break, all right? So when we return, Joshua, you just help us put that together, aggregate that, and let's understand from the foundation, what are the structural elements we need to start putting in place if we are hoping to develop an ecosystem in AI and other spheres that helps the African youth to thrive. All right? So just stay with us. We'll be back after this timeout. Of course, in Fafanua Afrika, we have been taking a look at some issues around job access, underemployment, unemployment issues on the continent, how that affects African youth, the fact that the opportunities are not there, there's structural defects, the government is not really doing anything, or should I say, whatever efforts they are putting in place is not appreciable or, optimized enough to help these youths, of course, scale or gain access or gain tools or be skilled enough to fit into the demands of the labor markets. And yes, I've been talking to Joshua Triumphant, who is the founder, Leaven Leadership Academy, Hameed Abdulrahman, a software engineer from Edinburgh, UK, and Moyinoluwa Allen, who is a product and technology leader in the UK. So these are the issues, despite the potentials that Africa has in terms of the numbers and the strength and the curiosity and the creativity and the willingness to learn, adapt, and grow. We still discover that there are still fundamental issues inhibiting Africa's youthful population and growth compared to other parts of the world. So I come to you, Joshua, and as I said earlier before we went on that break, I said we've seen African youths break even in agri-tech solutions, in fintech. We've seen startups, young minds, brilliant, wonderful. But then, like Hameed and Moyinoluwa said, there are still structural issues. How do we begin to fix the foundation? How do we begin to do what is necessary to begin to build the structures whereby the youth will have quality access, quality tools, are well equipped to be able to fit into this tech narrative?
Yes, starting from the grassroots and then taking it step by step. One of the key things has to be, like we have mentioned across all our conversation, proper leadership, proper digital education, digital literacy at the grassroots level. As early as possible, young Nigerians need to be introduced to a lot of these tools, this tech education that allows you expand the possibility of what you see and what you can build, whether in fintech or in agri-tech. Then we then have to get into hubs, technical hubs across our regions. Not just, again, I'm insisting, not just in primary markets like Lagos, but in secondary market as well, like, Uyo and what I call Ibadan, secondary markets, small cities, secondary cities. There has to be real resident technical hubs where from those points, people in that hub can have access to global infrastructure, cloud credits, these things that impede on real development and real production of products and services within the technical space. Then, take it up a bit, we have to have some type of clarity from government, right? So that you don't build a product and you're ready to launch and one policy kills your business. There has to be clarity from government. For instance, within the agri-tech, one of the key issues there is logistics. Another issue there is access to market and transparency between consumer and producers of farm produce or livestock or even seedlings in terms of seeds. So a young person who's going into that space has to figure out what the infrastructure gap is and then begin to identify technological tools that they can use to bridge that gap. So again, there are clarity from government to provide real transparency in terms of policies, and so that you know exactly if you are building something, you know that there's some level of security from government, so that you don't finish building and then one policy kills your business. So there has to be transparency from government. Of course, the and this is one of the final things I'll say, there has to be real, I don't want to say subsidy, because subsidy will not solve our problem. Because the cost, for instance, the cost of cloud services for young Nigerian is very high. All right, and that limits what you are able to produce. For high computing product like the fintech, or even in agri-tech. All right, so you need to, for whatever we need, however we need to solve that. Of course, that has to adhere to the government side in terms of creating the environment, and the investment side in terms of private investment, or capital investments from abroad, anywhere. The costs of these infrastructures has to also come down. Because if it is metered, I want you to think about it in terms of in terms of innovation. If a young person who is 15 years old has never had to turn off his data, his internet service, he has never had to turn it off, and compare that 15-year-old with a 25-year-old Nigerian who has to worry about his MTN data or his Glo data or whatever, who has to be, he's being innovative, he's trying to build something, but he has to calculate whether his data will finish or run out in the middle of a call or in the middle of watching a video that is educating him on how to produce something. So that matters. That matters as well.
It's quite big, and it's quite interesting, of course, Joshua, when you talk about data economy, most especially in this part of the world, and basically that's our reality, and I kind of get to understand these are the things that we cannot run away from. So Moyinoluwa, this is where you get to help us understand, because of course you're in the UK, you probably would have an understanding. Do we need a technology subsidy from government? Do we need data subsidy? Something that helps Africa's tech movement to thrive. I don't know how it works in the UK. Maybe you can, do some comparison and let us understand what is being done in that environment that probably we need to replicate here to make tech transition, tech adoption easy, seamless, and affordable for Africa.
When he mentioned comparing somebody in UK, and you obviously know that problem is there. Like you have to turn off your data in Nigeria to manage it and all of that. But yeah, over here, it's not like there are not people that they don't have people that have these challenges too, but it's not comparable, right? The margin is wide, and the access here is very easy. Is easy everywhere you go. Oh, you're going to the store, you're going to the gym, you're at the airport, you are going to church, anywhere there is access to to the internet, right? But in Nigeria or in Africa, it's kind of difficult, which sort of also affects the Nigerian youth, right? And if you compare both sides of the coin, somebody that's most likely in the UK would have access to more resources and their business would probably strive better than somebody that is in Nigeria that has electricity problem, that has data problem, that is also facing issues with government policies and all of that, even with customers. So from the UK or the Western divide, yes, it's a bit easier, but from the Nigerian divide, we have to solve basic problems like electricity and access to internet. If as a youth, or even as somebody that is passionate about building something, if my headache is, I need to work 12 hours a day and carry out research on how I can disrupt the market or break into the market, and I need electricity, I need to power up my computer, I need to power up my devices, and I'm already thinking of when will NEPA bring light, when I need to fuel my generator in order to, do all of these things. Somebody in the UK is not thinking about that, right? He knows that he's going to have constant access to the internet. There's light. He doesn't have to start thinking of where am I going to charge my laptop in order to, do what I need to do. So there is that gap. And in terms of subsidizing internet, I don't think subsidizing is the issue. Making it available is the issue. If it is available, right, people will be able to make use of it. Let it be available first before we start discussing, do we want to subsidize it or not? Make it available. Is internet undivided or undisrupted internet available? Is undisrupted electricity available? It is when we are able to solve those fundamental issues. That is when we can say, we want to start competing with, the other divide of the coin. We want to start competing with people in Europe. We want to start competing with people in America. That's when, if we're unable to solve those fundamental little, I don't even think they are little problem, because they are actually the bone of our problem or the issue of growth in Africa or Nigeria generally. So if we're able to solve those fundamental problems, somebody in Nigeria who is a creative or an entrepreneur will be able to even think better and be able to execute whatever plans that he or she has in mind better.
Fantastic. So Hameed, quickly, I'd like to just quickly point out what Joshua had said earlier. I talked about either hosting or accessing cloud services as being expensive. So I listened to the three of you, and it sounds as though in other parts of the world, it is affordable, it is available, it's more or less like part of everybody's life. But then when you look at the African continent, it is hard to access, it is hard to make that infrastructure available, then affordability is also a problem. Now, we're even talking about a continent where its governments are sitting on huge debt portfolio. They're indebted. They have to borrow to fund budgets. Don't ask me what they use those money for. I don't know. But then, they have to borrow to be able to fund budgets to pay for this. And we're talking about a tech ecosystem that is probably cash or capital intensive. Now, how do we break that barrier as a continent in terms of building the infrastructure? Moyinoluwa talked about electricity, talked about data availability. How do we provide the necessary infrastructure or resource, let me put it that way, to make these things available, affordable, and accessible for the African continent, most especially the African youths now?
That's a tough one. And the reason why I said this is due to the fact that even when you think about the internet itself, are more like basic amenities over here. They're more like things just like use very close to the oceans. And you get what I'm saying? Like, it's so basic that you have both lights and also you have internet supply, and you have this sense of not having to actually worry about those things. So in general, I think the cost might have to do with the fact that the currency to the actual payment of this platform are actually high, the exchange itself. So you can expect someone in the UK that probably the minimum wage is about £12 or so could actually buy a domain for about £5. Some of those domains are as cheap as about £5 and you can get one. But if you look back into like Africa or something, it could be up to like 25,000. So how would you want to now compare the number of hours you have to work to actually get about 25,000 in your account? So it's really, really deep rooted to the fact that both the currency, both the infrastructure, both the fact that these basic amenities are not actually there. So it's a huge one. It's a very, very huge one. And I think the government really, really, really needs to come in here, because if the government can actually find a way, like you rightly said, there's no need for subsidy, but actually there is actually need for subsidy in all these aspects that are very, very prominent to actual growth of our nations. So I think the government really, really needs to come in And if they could do a kickstart of actually like finding a way to actually reduce this cost for basic things that are actually like a necessity for growth. So the labor market is as short. And actually, even if we want to think about the fact that even young entrepreneurs trying to break that gap and go into the Silicon Valley, like trying to like do things for themselves, they still come with the actual gap of no understanding that some basic ideas that they are trying to actually implement is not actually a problem anymore because it's been solved as just normal basic amenities. Like there was an example of someone trying to actually build a banking app that doesn't require you to be connected to the internet. And in you trying to like pitch that to a Silicon Valley investor, you will see that there's no need for this actual thing because how won't you have internet to actually make a simple transfer and all that? So it's really core to the fact that this infrastructure are not there, and government need to like sit back and look into the fact that how they could actually like make these things easier for the labor force. And this overhead of this cost in the exchange rate is just too much. It's just too much. And I think we need to really go back to the drawing board and find a way to actually ease up these things for the labor market, ease up these things for the entrepreneurs that are actually trying to make things out there. Yeah, I think we need to actually look back in and think of subsidizing it. It's actually a very good thing. Yeah. And giving out loans that could actually help start up this startup to actually be able to compete in the global market itself. So so I think it's a good idea for we to actually involve government in actually subsidizing this infrastructure for the entrepreneurs more often. Yeah.
And we also understand that there could be some, PPP arrangements between government and private sectors and, some other independent bodies to strengthen this movement or this talk or conversations around investing in Africa's tech space, as we see that the world is pivoting towards AI and tech-based business and growth and all. And we hope that, these conversations will actually spur those in the confines of power to do what is necessary for the African youth. I must say a very big thank you to Joshua Triumphant, founder Leaven Leadership Academy. It was nice talking to you. Hameed Abdulrahman, software engineer at Edinburgh in the UK, and of course, Moyinoluwa Allen, who is a product and technology leader, of course, in the UK too. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts with us on the program.